Yeah, so I can see that we have gone live. There's been a slight delay due to technical glitches. A very good afternoon to one and all, and welcome to the second session of the winter retreat of TMYS. The theme of this session is Winter in the Classroom, and we have with us Professor Nirmala Menon, and we'll be joined shortly by Professor Nandini Sahu, and I am Dr. Sourav Banerjee. So before we begin our discussion proper, let me ask Professor Menon, what does winter mean to you? How do you enjoy winter? What do you prefer to do in winter? Be in class or elsewhere? Very briefly, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sourav. It's lovely to be here. And I like winter. I'm one of those winter people. And well, for winter, I'm in indoor, so we don't have a very long winter. But the little winter that we have, a lot of it is that we don't have classes. So I may not be in the class, but I generally like to, go out, have some nice, milk with kesar, those kind of things during winter. I think food is really good during winter, and I like to read. So, mhm.
Okay,
Over to you.
okay, and I, I think I can see that Professor Nandini Sahu has also joined us. Welcome,
Yeah,
welcome, ma'am. And I was asking
thank you.
Professor Menon. Yeah, and I was asking Professor Menon. So, what winter means to her? So before we begin with our discussion, I would ask you the same question. What does winter mean to you? And what do you prefer to do in winter? I mean, be in class or elsewhere? So very briefly, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, I'm so sorry I joined a bit late because I am joining from somewhere else. I'm not in my university, neither I'm at home. So I'm joining from some other place. So I'm really sorry. And this is a very interesting session. Thank you, Coral, and thanks to all the participants and all the panelists in the session for giving me this opportunity. To me, winter means vibrance. Winter is full of promises. Winter is full of life. And winter is one season when I am truly happy and I'm in my elemental self. So for me, winter is full of promises.
Okay, that's very nice to hear. So
Yeah,
now we'll begin, and I'll begin with a quotation from Haruki Murakami.
right.
There is an instinctive withdrawal for the sake of preservation, a closure that assumes the order of completion. Winter is a season unto itself. Unquote. Now, coming to the theme of the session, we must understand that winter and nature are introduced in the classroom through their representations in literature. When one thinks of winter, the things that come to the mind are freezing temperatures, the ice, the chills, and the snow.
Yeah.
Now, traditionally, while spring has been a symbol of love, joy, and beginning of a new life, winter has been represented in literature as a symbol of darkness, sadness, old age, uh, ill health. Now, winter has been used as a synecdoche for a bleak year. Yet, winter is also the time for some of the greatest social celebrations and the setting and theme of some great texts in literature. The lists the list includes Beowulf, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Wordsworth's The Lucy Gray poems, Dickens's A Christmas Carol, Raymond Briggs' The Snowman, and of course my favorite, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, where Frost so longs to watch the lovely, dark, and deep woods fill up with snow on the darkest evening of the year. So we see that it would be a gross oversimplification to stick to this spring good, winter bad binary and see nature only from this perspective. We must delve deep. We find that winter is that time of the year when the normal hustle bustle of the ecology is shut down. Most things go into hibernation, and let me say, nature takes control. Control is the key word here, for that is what human beings try to do with anything and everything. And this desire of the capitalists and patriarchs to control nature has been used as a board to justify exploitation of women. And bleak, like winter, is the fact that a woman is naturalized while nature is feminized and gendered, and both are exploited. The idea that women and nature are inherently linked is a tacit acceptance of their mutual exploitation. It is used to, let's say, reinforce and legitimize gender stereotypes and roles. People like Simon de Beauvoir have always argued that one is not born a woman, but they become a woman, especially because of the proactive act that they perform. Ecofeminism emerged in the mid 1970s alongside the second wave feminism and the Green Movement. It is that strand of feminism that delves into the domain of environment and ecology and how these are related with the exploitation of women. They draw a link between the degradation of nature and the oppression of women. We have been taught to address nature as Mother Earth. Through this symbolism, what happens is that nature is allegorized as a powerful maternal force, the womb of all human production that caters to our needs and necessities time and again. And winter in nature is a representation of women in a state of getting ready to bring forth new life. This idea is a comforting analogy, except for the fact that it lingers on gendered and sexist language that is reinforced in the lives of women, expecting them to possess the same nature as the nature of Mother Earth. This entire, again, quote unquote, savior complex that a man is the supposed protector of women is reflected here. The mother needs protection. She is incapable of defending her own self. That is what we are taught. Thus, the term that may have risen out of a spiritually rich tradition or traditions has now come to represent the twin exploitation of the patriarchal society. Both nature and women are expected to be accepting, available, and accommodating of the desires of men. We know that nature will never come down on earth to rationally deliberate with its exploiters, nor will humans ever engage in any argument with nature, just like men historically have never seen fit to deliberate with a woman who is deemed emotional, lacking in deliberative capacity. Even Aristotle thought so, and is too mercurial for logic and reason. Likewise, let's say since nature can also never say a no to its exploiters, it is often assumed that a woman will also never say a no. Or if she dares, then there is a hidden yes in it. Now, this is very melodramatic, very Mills and Boonish, and even very Bollywoodish. Nature is also seen as a site of sexual enticement and ultimate seduction. It's a kind of a physical territory available to us as a source of erotic delight. This is seen in abundance in literature where nature is addressed for its scintillating beauty, its sensational eroticism that arouses sexual feelings and emotions. Nature in poems is often discussed in reference to a woman's life cycle like, say, reproduction, fertility, etc. Phrases like virgin earth, fertile land, and barren soil should ring a bell in our minds. An ideal girl must always be virgin and fertile, and both these can only be opened when she marries rather. A barren woman is either a witch or some other form of evil, and therefore should be shunned. These socially constructed phrases are legitimized when they're used to address nature, a pure and divinely ordained entity. It tricks our mind into thinking that these labels rather, actually exist, that these are the treasures that are there for us to open and enjoy. So it is high time now that we realized it is okay if a woman is not a mother, a virgin, or fertile, but barren, bold, and strong. Similarly, we must realize that nature is not just for our needs, it has its own needs too. And these are the things that need to be taught in the class, according to me. Now, continuing in the same with the same theme, this desire of the capitalists and patriarchs to control nature has led to the climate crisis. This crisis can be avoided by knowledge, by learning more about the nature of nature. But the question is, can nature be taught in class? If so, what is the pedagogy? How does it work? And what are its implications? Is this pedagogy in contradiction to Wordsworth's philosophy of nature as something to be felt and not taught? And may I quote from him, felt in the blood and felt along the heart, and passing even into my purer mind. Unquote. Also, another thing that is associated with this climate crisis that goes into the classroom would be the climate fiction, popularly cli-fi. This term first came into use on the 20th of April 2013 when NPR, or National Public Radio, Washington, D.C., did a 5-minute radio segment by Angela Evansi on Weekend Edition Saturday. Since then, it has become a subgenre within science fiction, and speculations have risen as to whether climate crisis can trigger a nuclear winter, even without a nuclear war. And here, I would invite Professor Menon to share her views on winter, nature, and these climate fictions. Professor Menon.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That was absolutely a wonderful beginning. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about feminism and ecofeminism. And part of, one of the courses that I teach is actually, focused on ecofeminism. I'm not going to talk about that today, but I'm going to extend what you were mentioning by saying that, yes, I do, like I said in the beginning in a response to your question, I do like winter. But I want to, kind of read to you two poems from two opposite spectrums of what you just talked about. One, a poem about winter, and another about like a nuclear winter, or like, are we coming to a tipping point in the climate crisis, and is climate fiction really addressing that crisis, and if so, how, and is it enough, right? So the first one is, it's a small poem. I'm not even sure who the author is, but I have it written down on one of my documents. It says, I love it when it's cold, and I love it when it's snow. I love those mighty winds, and I love all those I know. But I'm grateful for loneliness, and grateful for some pain, and grateful for my struggles, and grateful for the rain. So this is kind of the pastoral winter, with both its beauty and its pain. That we are, when we think about nature poetry, when we think about, I'm sorry, when we think about nature poetry, or we think about any kind of season poetry, that's the kind of poems that you look to. Now, you come, we are living or experiencing a kind of climate catastrophe or climate derangement, as Amitav Ghosh likes to call it, the way we have still not fathomed how, as creative writers or writers, we address that crisis. So, I wanted to read another poem called Particulate Matter by Molly Fisk, where it's a kind of a stark poem. If all you counted were tires on the cars left in driveways and stranded behind beside the road, melted dashboards and tail lights, oil pans, window glass, steel belt clasps, the propane tanks in everyone's yards, though we didn't hear them explode. R13 insulation, paint inside and out. The liquor store's plastic letters in puddle colors below their charge sign. Each man-made sole of every shoe in all those closets. The laundromat's washers around metal doors. And then Arco and Walgreens and the library, everything they contained. How many miles of electrical wire and PVC pipes swirling into the once blue sky? How many linoleum acres? Not to mention the valley oaks, the ponderosas, all the wild hearts and all the cane, their bark and leaves and hooves and hair and bones, their final cries. So many particular, precious, irreplaceable lives that despite ourselves we are inhaling. So, that this is an example of climate poetry. And one of the texts that I teach in class, and one of the things that I try to discuss with my students, is that when we discuss the climate crisis, one of the things that we notice is, and Amitav Ghosh actually very beautifully lays it out in the climate, in the Great Derangement, that the rhetoric around climate crisis and so far has been too political, too bureaucratic, and not creative enough. Okay? If this is a crisis, if it is a collective crisis that we have to address together as humanity, then it behooves us to kind of find creative ways of addressing that. So, Ghosh actually says that, we don't have enough climate fiction and that we really need to have climate fiction stories, narratives that talk about catastrophe in a way that kind of breaks through, capitalist, nationalist, and interests, and in a language that is not only bureaucratic. Right? So it kind of focuses on the climate crisis. And the examples that that Ghosh uses in his text are two very different documents. One of them is the Paris Climate Treaty, which is lauded around the world as being one of the most progressive ones. And the second one is a letter, Laudato Si, from the Pope, about the climate crisis. Right? And what is so stark, the stark difference between these two narratives is that the scientific document, or the document that is supposed to focus on strategies and points, actually keeps skirting around the catastrophe. It keeps kind of, the catastrophe on the margins, is very careful about the words it chooses, really does not make anyone accountable, least of all corporations or capitalists, uh, and still tries to get, incremental things done. Right? Whereas, the fourth letter, on the other hand, does exactly the opposite. So, in other words, you find that in these two narratives, the Pope's letter is far more direct and less prophetic, whereas the Paris Treaty ends up as a document that seems like full of possibilities, full of miracles that may happen, if we do this. Right? And so what you actually see is that as humanity or as a species, we have not yet confronted climate crisis in the way that we should, understood or acknowledge it as this, as this at the level or the scale of the crisis. And so I feel, and I think, as a teacher and as an educator, I do think that fiction, narratives, and stories are the ones that will actually get that story to to people, and help them understand, how we might have a collective response to it. It is not going to be done through the treaties or through bureaucracies. Right? And I think climate fiction, uh, uh, calling it climate fiction as a subgenre or Anthropocene fiction, though climate fiction tries to move away from Anthropocenity in the sense that, thinking of the human being as a center of the earth and trying to make it more expansive and inclusive. So that's really like where I think that when you talk about the winter, a winter of our species, or if we talk about the biggest crisis that is facing mankind today, I would think of it as the climate crisis, and I would actually urge, and I do think that now we have on social media as well as groups, and I think CNYS also has like climate fiction as one of the subgenres, and we are seeing more and more narrative works come out, both poetry as well as literature. And as we teach them at every level of our pedagogy, at every level of our education, I think we will find that we will have a little bit perhaps progress as well as buy some time for the planet, as it were. So for me, pedagogy, there is pedagogy at different levels. The primary level of the student and the teacher, but pedagogy at a national or a state or community level, and pedagogy on a global scale, where we begin to make the crisis itself as a center of our discussions and not at the periphery or the margin. So that's not a very uplifting winter spiel, Dr. Sourav, but that's where I will end my few words on climate fiction.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. And well, let's say that the classroom is not always about theory and isms. It is also about creativity. And I'm very sure that the poet among us in this session, who has been sitting patiently so long, will surely be happy to talk about her poems and the things they focus on in the representation of winter slash nature in the classroom. So I would pass on the baton to Professor Sahu to take this forward. It's all yours, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Saurav. So kind of you that you said such nice words about me. Uh, in my classroom, I usually talk about winter in terms of eco poetry. When Dr. Coral and you, both of you, invited me for this session, the first thing that came to my mind was eco poetry. I will talk about ecology and then how poetry and ecology are closely associated, and you have given a befitting introduction to that. And the other day I was teaching the poem Shelley's The Ode to the West Wind, and then I will try to associate Shelley's poem Ode to the West Wind with a couple of my winter poems. uh, how I have taken the clue from that, and then I have written those poems. Basically, this poem Ode to the West Wind, it stands for optimism. We all know about positive thoughts, the importance of optimism and positive thoughts in our life. And it's I think this poem was published in 1819, so rather an old poem, and it still has its relevance in our classrooms. When I teach the lines like "If winter comes, can spring be far behind?" the students have a sparkle in their eyes. They think optimistic, they think positive. So this poem has five cantos. The poem "Ode to the West Wind," and each section consists of four tercets, and it begins with the three sections describing the winter's effects on planet Earth. How winter actually changes planet Earth towards positivity, towards optimism. And in the last two sections, Shelley, he speaks directly to winter, to the West Wind. West wind stands for winter to me, and he directly speaks to the west wind and asking the winter season, the west wind, to lift him up, to give him that power, that positivity, to live an optimistic life, and he is asking winter to make him its companion. And the poem definitely ends with an optimistic note, and it says that if winter days are here, that means if the days of suffering, pain, bitterness are here, the days of beauty, positivity, optimism, love are out there, they are coming to you, so you have to only wait with patience. So with that note, since I am invited as a poet, and also Dr. Sourav kindly introduced me as the creative writer here, so please permit me to recite a couple of my poems on the theme winter. One of the poems is December Again. So December is very cold, winter in its peak, and the poem was written in December. The title of the poem is December, comma, Again. December again, the month to feel all feelings. I feel otherworldly, as if for ages to come, twisting libelous thoughts make me gloomy as belated hours. I pick stars for me and my love. Now flowers bloom, the sweet scent of joy blows on the breeze. The rising sun renews the world. See, the renewal of the world is the theme. In the long, dark nights, the clouds of exhaust vapor in the eastern region and my heart's horizon. Now I become a withered blossom of bygone months. Now I smile and now I wail. Now I hold you sweet in my arms, and now, like purple haze, you disappear. Now I feel like saying farewell to all those bittersweet memories. Write a lyric for you with words carefully chosen, musically harmonious, vowels manipulated in euphony. Now I beg alms in the door of words, yet now I sing all day long. My grand tribute to love, music resounds with winged fancies. December again. Luxurious winter again. See, I associate winter with luxury. Luxurious winter again. In my new heartbeat, I rediscover my love away in the grand mirror palaces of Maharani Palace. I roam alone where the past shaped life royal, their attitude forming an edifying quest. In the mountain tops of Udaipur, mirrors, whirling, dazzling skirts, camels, grand, decorated elephants, dreamy forts, and dancing puppets. In local trains, hot coffee and the tramp nuzzing at our elbows, watching the never ending yellow mustard fields and long deserted deserts of Rajasthan. I find you hazy, watery eyes lost into the horizon. You are an image, the silhouette, sharp. I pursue the image, bewitched by love's smiths. Now you are near, and now in a flux, far. This December, silence of seas brood over. In December, I become I. I live my dreams, my elemental dreams, and my hallucinations, of course. I open my eyes in lazy, cool mornings. The world exists, gathering new norms when you and I work on the computer. And in afternoons, I regret my gross inability to assert all worlds inherent dissolution of myself coherent, and there seems to be a universe between you and me. But for my books, my poetry, my alphabets, my blue sky, my life mine, all mine. In evenings I gather up. Oh no, such restraints never elevate us. Give the whole of me to the whole of you, to the world of oblivion of all arts, all sciences. In December wintry nights, I feel more netted and slender, wipe off lonely, sleepless hours of desire. December again, the month of homecoming across half the globe. Let go, soft disk memories of younger sisters growing malarial, dead young brother, parents, kith and kin half forgotten, typical New Year wishes from friends, formal, gold medals to feel proud, own people now foreign, oblivious of the same apartment neighbor, overcrowded topsy-turvy people around this December. Tears feel no more like tears. Your face eclipses every other face. Your young smile beams in the browsers of the heart. Now the heart is free of right and wrong. December is the month of floating images, of events like swinging clocks, when memory rustles down and spreads its arm to the bottom of the bone marrow, from heart to soul, with a life full of Decembers, a time to feel all feelings December again. So, this was a poem written long ago, maybe a few years back, during my early youth, I would say, when December stood for so many feelings, varieties of feelings like romantic, sadness, detachment, attachment, all contradictory feelings, but ultimately there was optimism. There was
Yes,
acceptance. Winter
yes.
stands for acceptance. And then a very recent poem, the title, it's a very short poem. I'll just take 1 minute to read this poem.
No
The
problem,
title
no
of the,
problem.
yeah, the title of the poem is Delhi, 10 a.m. Winter. It's a very modern poem. It's a postmodern poem, you can say. Delhi, 10 a.m. Winter. So at 10 a.m. in the morning in Delhi, it's still very dark outside. You don't get the sun in winter. Now, January, it's so dark even till 10 a.m. The poem is, did you hear it right? Did you hear it right? It's 10 a.m. January, Delhi. Hitherto, no light. The sun is earnest and quiet. The mist hangs heavy overload. Chandni Chowk is fighting with seclusion. A man with hands in his heavy coat pockets whistles a tune to battle the chill. No listeners out there. Vaishnava Janato, the song goes on. An old man, a freedom fighter, maybe, takes a proud walk in Rajghat. His teenage granddaughter prefers Lady Gaga on her iPod, watching for grandpa in the car, waiting for grandpa in the car. Vaishnava Janato in Rajghat. No listeners out there. Delhi, the city of mosques and minarets, the city of war and peace, stands still at 10 a.m. It's still a little dark. Did you hear it right? January, Delhi, 10 a.m. A tender delight. So, this is the mood in winter, a tender delight. All happy feelings, all good feelings, optimistic, positive feelings come to the poets in winter. Winter is the season of celebration, love, romance, and our connect with nature. Winter makes me open up petal by petal. I am myself, my elemental self during winter.
Okay, that was, I mean, those two are beautiful. And you've covered a, I mean, huge range from being inspired by Ode to the West Wind to the postmodern poem about iPhones and technology and all. I mean, what else could be there in the poems? So that was wonderful. And now let us talk about something else. Like, I'll put forward a question to both of you. Anyone can take it. Winter, actually, the concept of winter that we have, even what I have said, most of what I have said, the concept of winter being a kind of everything going into hibernation, slowing down, and other things. That is, don't you think that is mostly Eurocentric concept? Like winter, I can see I have the ceiling fan on. Uh, Indoor is not very cold. Only Delhi maybe has a bit of chill in the evening. So that's it. So winter for us is not the time to shut down or hibernate or something like that. Yes, we enjoy our winters like the English people enjoy the English summers. So
Yes.
why do we subscribe to that kind of Eurocentric view and not celebrate our winters as our spring? I mean, what do you do? What do you do to tell the students that our winter is different from the Eurocentric winter? Professor Menon first, and then Professor Sahu.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Dr. Sarah. I have always said that to my students that when we talk about winters, our winters are actually the pleasant time. Like I said, we enjoy winters. You enjoy having that chill in the air and sitting around a fire, maybe if you are in a colder part of the country, where it's never where everything is shut down or snowed under. There are very few places that you have that. So I do think that even if you look at our literatures, across languages, you will find that winters are not described as days of doom. They're usually described as kind of with the moon being more clearer, with a certain sense of a romance about the food, the different kind of grains or the vegetables, the specific vegetables that are cooked. So yeah, I completely agree with you that that this notion of a, a dreary winter is not necessarily an Eastern concept. It is more of the rough terrains, maybe not now, but in terms of the history of poetry and history of literature and the rough landscapes in parts of Europe is where that metaphor comes from. So we have multiple metaphors of winter in this country, and I think we have it in this region too, and we have it differently in different parts of the country too. So
Yeah,
an
exactly,
Uttarakhand
exactly.
poem is very different from say a winter poem in the south, like in Kerala, for example. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. And I think we need to both understand, enjoy, and kind of absorb those various metaphors.
Okay, Professor Sahu, please on this.
Yeah, I so agree with you that in India, at least, winter is not the time to hibernate. Winter is the time to celebrate. So all our important events like our seminars, our conferences, our study tours, and celebrations. In fact, starting with shopping, going out, everything happens in winter. And when I teach winter poems from the European literature to my students, I always ask them to read it as a reader, not to attach ourselves with that, but to read and understand another culture. So they would like to understand the European culture, lifestyle, and whatever happening in the Western countries during winter should be read with little detachment. Need not try to associate or attach ourselves with that, because for us, winter is not the time to hibernate, but to celebrate.
Okay.
Mm.
Thank you for your answers. But my next question or point of contention, it might seem a little naughty. Like I'll
Yeah.
refer to the Tempest. I'll refer to the Tempest. Like remember Caliban saying that you have taught me language, and my profit on it is that I can curse you in your language. So when these kind of winter and the degradation feelings of winter or the dreary feelings of winter are being forced upon us as if that is what we experience. Do you think this is a kind of a cultural colonialism? And if it is so, should we not fight back or hit out at the European literature with our own interpretations and complete different interpretations and celebrations of winter? What can we do to counter this? Your suggestions and your views on this. This time, Professor Sahu first.
Okay. See, I would say it's not imposed. Nothing is imposed. It depends on the teacher and the researchers and the students how they accept something, how they read the texts. Like they can read a text from Western literature, and they do not have necessarily to associate themselves with that, which I already told you. So maybe we can take some examples, some ideas from our own literatures, our Indian literatures, and then associate, maybe compare that with Western literature, how a snowfall is accepted in some Western text, and how it is accepted in some Indian text. Maybe that kind of comparative analysis will make our students a bit clear. So I can give you a small example here, that suppose someone is wearing white dress in Indian context. A woman is wearing a white sari.
Yes.
In Indian context, she is a widow. So we feel
mm,
sad, okay, she became a widow. But if someone is wearing a white gown in Western context, it's her wedding
mm.
dress, it's her wedding gown. So we
Yes,
have to differentiate like that. That white stands for something to us, and the color white, a white dress, a white gown stands for something else to them. Similarly,
yes,
winter stands something for them, it stands for something else to us. We have to understand both. We have to make a comparative analysis of both.
yeah,
So that
correct,
will
correct,
it
absolutely.
become stand clear. Yeah.
Yes, and Professor Menon, your views on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with Mr. Sahu. I think, any kind of stories or narratives that come from a particular place is always contextualized for that place. That does not mean that we do not understand a Russian story that is set in a very harsh winter and the kind of, narratives that might come from there and teach that to our students while also kind of, both ensuring that they understand and know our own stories, but also that our stories also travel, and so they know what a winter in India is like, right? So I'm thinking, but I want to get to your question. Where you specifically asked, if it's a kind of a colonial hangover, right? The colonial hangover comes from,
Yes,
uh, uh, what is her name? Chimamanda Ngozi. The African writer, she talks about when she was a young girl in Africa, growing up in Africa, and trying to write novels or trying to write stories. And when she tried to write stories, the only examples that she had around her were, British stories or British fiction, right? So she says that, when as a child or as a young girl, when she was trying to write stories, her stories would, people would be eating apples and not mangoes because, even though there were no apples where she lived, and that people
mm,
would, they would be making, they would be drinking root beer, though she had no idea what root beer was. Yeah,
yes, yes,
and that, they were always talking about when the sun would come out, right? Whereas in Africa, you really didn't need to talk about when the sun would
yes,
come out, right? And so that, and she says, was a lack of having literature about Africa around her for her to read. And what African writers did was to give her that context. So I get your point. I think it is important that, our stories are also circulating so that, they are contextualized and people and young writers or young students have an opportunity to learn from those stories and to understand those stories. But I also think that it does not mean that we should not understand what happens in, say, in Poland or in Russia or the kind of winters that, different parts of the globe experience. And I do think that students today are actually more aware of the globality of all of these experiences and the diversity of them than perhaps we were when we were younger, because their access to the world through different platforms is so much wider and so much more expansive.
okay.
Does that answer
Yeah,
your
thank you.
question?
That was really well explained. Yeah, of course, of course. That was really well explained. So I think we are almost at the end of our time, and if you permit me, I cannot resist the temptation of ending by quoting a few lines from Albert Camus. So
Sure,
I
please.
quote,
Yeah.
yeah, I quote, in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer,
Yeah.
and that makes me happy. For it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, there's something stronger, something better pushing right back. Unquote. So, on that note, I think we'll have to end our session here. Very big thanks to both of you for participating in this session.
Yeah.
Thanks, EMYS, for also arranging and letting me moderate and speak in this session. So, it's goodbye from me.
Thank you, Doctor,
Thank
for
you.
moderating the session so nicely. You really did it
Yes.
very nice. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thank
It's
you
you.
my
so much.
pleasure.
It was fun. It's so much
Okay.
fun to,
Okay.
to listen to Ode to the West Wind. It's been a long time since I heard that. Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Sahu. That was wonderful. And thank you, Saurabh.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Chairman.
And
I
thank you
thoroughly
for
enjoyed
connecting
my
with